Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. Vaccine mandates have been established in nearly all jurisdictions in Canada, from airports to restaurants to even your local hockey league. You aren't going to access many places unless you divulge proof of your double COVID jab. Now, I don't recall any other time in Canadian history where a citizen has been compelled or even coerced into sharing private healthcare information. But Canadians seem eager to surrender private medical exemption letters to their local bartender or to hand over a document with their private personal details, including one's health card number, to their kid's hockey coach. What's potentially worse, many Canadians are using digital apps to upload their personal medical information or to generate a QR code. And just how secure is our information on these apps? There have already been several reports of hackers getting in and stealing the information. Has your private medical information been hacked, sold, used by someone else? Whatever happened to our charter-enshrined privacy rights? Have those rights been cast aside for the greater good? And what about surveillance, geolocation, and biomedical? Is the government storing data of where you are when you use your QR code or on your personal medical information? Is the government tracking you? Most importantly, will this vaccine passport regime ever end? Or is this the new normal? Well, joining me now to help us understand some of the privacy and security issues surrounding vaccine passports is Dr. Cavoukian, Executive Director of Global Privacy and Security by Design Centre and former Information and Privacy Commissioner for the province of Ontario. And we have joining us Michelle Simard, Senior Legal Counsel and Privacy Officer. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to dive right in. Maybe I'll start quickly with you, Dr. Anne, with what our charter right to privacy entails. And I think that's an important thing to ask because we need to really understand what our rights are and then how they may or may not be being infringed upon. So what is that charter privacy right?
I mean, we have a right to privacy. It forms the foundation of our freedom. We have privacy laws across the country, provincially and federally. You cannot have free and open societies without a solid foundation of privacy. So this is not something that we can just allow to disappear.
But we are allowing it in some regards because, every time we engage in sharing our information, uploading it to an app, are we not infringing on our own right to privacy or we not violating our own privacy?
Let me just tell you what the difference is. If you choose to release your personal information, that's your choice. I always tell people, privacy is not a religion. You want to give it away, be my guest, as long as you make the decision to do so. Privacy is all about control. It's about personal control relating to the use and disclosure of your personal information. So it's up to the individual, the data subject, as to whether they choose to release their information or not. But it's not up to the government.
So we don't need, in a sense, like Big Brother, or no, I should use a better phrase, like a nanny to basically say, no, you shouldn't be doing this. You should know for yourself, this is your right. If you're handing it over, then you've signed on that dotted line.
Exactly. It's up to the individual to make these decisions.
Okay. And I want to get you in here, Michelle, with respect to, I would say, the sudden mass divulgence of private information. And yes, many people are consenting to it. Obviously, if they're engaging it, they are. What is the concern for these rights going forward if so many people are just basically casting them away?
So I think for me, it's this, and it's a common theme for me, is that you mentioned the word consent, that so many people are consenting. So I would take a step back, and I think the issue that we're having right now is informed consent. I think that a lot of people are consenting to something that they're not quite aware of what it's doing, what's happening with it, what are the mandates, what are the requirements, if even the businesses are following the guidance that was given to them by the provincial government. So the provincial government had the Reopening Ontario Act, right? Mm-hmm. And then Health Ontario came out with a guidance for all people and businesses in order to follow to the so-called vaccine passport. But are those businesses following it? Who's monitoring the businesses? Are the businesses being compliant? Because on the mandate and the guidance, it says you're not allowed to collect the personal information. You're not allowed to collect that health information.
Right.
But are they really doing so? And as an example, as a personal anecdote, I went to a funeral last week, and part of the requirement was for me to show my QR code and show proof of an ID. But then when I walked in, they also wanted me to sign a book. That is where I had the issue, where I was just like, it's fine if I just show you my ID and show you my QR code. So you can match the names and see, fine, I'm vaccinated. But then for me to then sign my name, that means now you're collecting my personal information. If your policies are that I only allowed in is if I showed this information, then that means I've now disclosed it to you. So I refused.
Okay,
And
I'm
then,
gonna jump in here. I want to really understand this, but we're gonna come to this commercial break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're discussing privacy and QR codes and apps and what kind of medical information are we consenting to provide and where is it going? Who's collecting this data? Are they keeping it? Joining me again is Dr. Cavoukian and Michelle Simard. Michelle, just before we went to commercial, you shared an anecdote that you were at a funeral home, you showed your QR code, they didn't gather that information, they didn't collect it, that's great, you just showed it visually. But then they made you sign a book. Is this for contact tracing? Like, what were you required to sign, or what did they ask you to sign?
So I asked them that question, and then they said to me, it's for the family. And I said, okay, but now everybody who walks in gets to see my name on it. I can see everybody else's name. It's not private. You've done nothing to protect my privacy. And what if I don't want people to know that? And because your requirements are that I have to be vaccinated in order to come in, so you're not doing enough to protect it. But this is a common theme that I see with many businesses. Everyone has like a sign-in sheet and everybody can see who walked in.
But it's for contact tracing, right? In case they say, this is what I'm told. Sign the sheet because it's for contact tracing. And if you don't, they're not going to let you in.
Yeah, so this is the problem that I have, compliance and informed consent, because I don't believe people are having informed consent. They're giving consent, but it's not informed. And then the compliance with the businesses and regulations, I don't think and who's monitoring that compliance? Because I don't think there's anybody monitoring it.
Well, it sounds like people are running loose with privacy in this country. Dr. Ann, I wanted you to chime in there. I'm surprised. Like, I would love to travel everywhere with Michelle Simard or with you, Dr. Ann, and I have you right at my side, giving me the information I need to make an informed decision. But I don't have it. Most people don't have an Ann or a Michelle to travel with them. What are we doing here?
Let me start, Tanya, by telling you why I object to the collection of this information to begin with. I object to vaccine passports. This is a requirement that you have to reveal information relating to your health information. That has never been the case. Your health information is very sensitive data you share with your doctor. It's strongly protected. In Ontario, we have PHIPA, the Personal Health Information Protection Act. We have all this. So all of a sudden now the government is mandating, no, you have to reveal your vaccine information. That is appalling to me. I totally object to that. And I don't think people should be required to do this. It can't be a zero-sum game where it's privacy versus public health. We've always embraced both. How do you have privacy and public health? We can do both. We've been doing that for years. No, all of a sudden, the fear has mounted to such a degree that the governments feel they can get away with things like vaccine passports, which are a first. And let me also tell you, my fear is that when the pandemic ends, and it will, the passports will continue. I've seen this over the years where there's an emergency situation. I remember 9/11, I was privacy commissioner at the time. Enormous fear, terrorist incident, of course. But then the incident ends and all the protections introduced during that time continue, the Patriot Act, et cetera.
Right.
That's my fear with the pandemic.
Yeah, you know what? I read you wrote an article or you were interviewed, and I recall that you flagged that. And I remember those times. I was in university when 9/11 hit, and I remember the huge debate, especially amongst Republicans, there were some that generally went a little bit more libertarian. They said, no, we should not, even though it was a Republican-led government under George W. Bush, people said, no, we should not be going down this path. And exactly what you suggested, that it's very hard to claw these things back once you introduce them as the norm or once you give these weapons to the government.
Yes, that's exactly it. And it will infringe upon our freedom enormously. And to me, freedom is essential, and privacy forms the foundation of our freedom.
So, I mean, we'll get onto the program of what one does, but say you have a child who wants to play hockey and they say we need to show proof of COVID vaccination. Do you show them just a QR code or a screenshot? But you're still actually giving them private healthcare information, even if you don't hand the paper or the documents to them. They still know what your state of healthcare is, if you will.
That's right. And they will also, a lot of these places are, in addition to the QR code, they're asking for some actual identification from grown-ups, your driver's license, your name, your photo, and they're recording that. And this will create such a world of surveillance, because that will be linked to your geolocation data, wherever you were at what time when you revealed that. And everyone's collecting this. So the potential for massive surveillance is growing enormously.
My goodness. Well, what happens if, they say we're not recording it, you don't have to sign a sheet, but you still have to show them your license and show that, but they're not taking that down. And I've seen the bylaws. Usually they say you're not supposed to record that information. You're not supposed to hand anything over. Would that be good enough?
Well, it's certainly better, but I personally fear that even with the QR codes, this is going to be linked to some other data that will be retained in a central manner. That is the upshot that is inevitable.
Okay, well, we're going to have to pick up this discussion just a few moments, because I know people want to know, are we being surveilled and what's happening with this information? And I think that's really what we're going to have to unpack just after this commercial break. Welcome back. We're talking about all things related to the COVID vaccine passport, especially the QR codes and these apps. What is the security around these things? And when you upload your personal information, is someone recording it? Is someone surveilling you? Michelle, we've had you on before, and you kind of raised the alarm, especially for these third-party apps that want you to upload your personal information. What are some of the concerns with doing that, with uploading your personal health card information, your name, your full legal name, that sort of thing?
Well, like everything, it's the collection. So going back to the guidance that the Ontario government gave was that you're not to collect it. But with a third-party app, like when I did ring the alarm bells, is that what are they doing with that? Where are they storing it? Are they even following proper privacy protocols and requirements within Canada? And at the end of the day, likely not, because who's monitoring them? What's the consequence for them? And why are they even collecting it in the first place? Because they want the data, and data is gold right now, and everybody knows that. And so going back to Dr. Cavoukian's point about the geolocation, it is a problem, because then when you have people using different services, which Apple's getting a little better about it, but when they use different services or they go to different places, you can be tracked. And then putting your ID out there, and even though, I just asked the question, if they just show it and they're not collecting it, but who's to say someone's not taking a picture, or somebody else in the background is doing something else? Because as I mentioned in a previous segment, your health card number is worth thousands of dollars on the deep dark web, thousands and thousands of dollars, and your full name is worth thousands of dollars. And so at the end of the day, putting it out there and somebody knowing that a hostess at a restaurant will keep asking for this, they can just sit there all day with their camera and just click, 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 click. And restaurants and people who work there, they're not thinking about these things. It's not part of their mandate or protocol. And the guidance that was provided by the government and provided by Health Ontario, that guidance mentioned nothing about when you ask for this information. So why they tell them you can't collect it, they're not telling them what they should do to protect it. Because even when you're showing it, somebody could be sitting there and monitoring it the entire time.
Well, you raise a very good point, and I think, I don't want our viewers thinking we're being alarmist. Let's be very clear. Some of these apps have already been hacked. I could say the Canadian Vaccine App Port Pass, it was a few months ago or several weeks ago, it stopped registering new users and ordered 2 security audits after allegations were made that the public were able to see personal data of users online, including their ID. Saskatchewan had issues. QR codes were temporarily removed after another privacy breach. One person's data was shared with the QR codes of 3 other people. There are glitches here. And I don't know if they're permanently able to be resolved. So this is a real thing, and I think our viewers need to be aware that this isn't alarmism. It's a real concern.
It is very real. And Michelle nailed it. She gave so many examples, and you referred to it. And there are data breaches, things that happen all the time. Newfoundland and Labrador, just last week, huge, massive data breach. Hundreds of thousands of individuals' health information was accessed. So don't think that information is safe online. It's not. It requires the strongest protection, which is often lacking. And that's why it's best not to reveal any of this information. That's why requiring a vaccine passport is just, to me, it's absurd. It will not eliminate this problem. but it will put your privacy at great risk.
We're opening Pandora's box, it sounds like. Now, what about if you have to just show a paper, a physical paper document, Dr. Ann? Is that okay? Is that a better way to go? I mean, obviously someone behind the counter could still take a snapshot of it without you maybe even seeing, but that to me seems a little bit more secure than uploading it to an app.
It may perhaps be, but it's not okay, because someone created that print. You printed it from somewhere. Someone created the information that you have on your paper. So it resides somewhere. So the risk continues. We just have to eliminate the concept of vaccine passports and forcing people to engage in this kind of behavior. We need to preserve our privacy at all costs. And we have to understand that this has to continue, not just now, but well into the future. We need systems to ensure that that will take place, and they're lacking right now.
But let me ask you a question. For those who have gotten the vaccine, isn't their information already sitting in a data bank somewhere with Health Ontario, for example, Ontario Health or Alberta Health Services? So isn't that information already there? Like we use
digital. Already there. But the point is, with vaccine passports, you're traveling all over the place. You're going to restaurants, you're going to concerts, you're going to different places, and you're providing this information. So it's not just the Ministry of Health that has your information. And let's just presume that they have some security measures there. You are being required to communicate this information widely wherever you travel.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, we're going to continue this discussion in just a few moments. Welcome back. We're wrapping up our discussion on privacy in the times of COVID, especially with these vaccine passports. What information are you sharing? Should you be sharing that information? Dr. Ann Cavoukian, you recently stated, and correct me if I'm misquoting you here, but that we're creating basically a global digital infrastructure surveillance. What does that mean, and what should we really be concerned about? Is this meaning that there's like the governments around the world are banding together to surveil everything that we're doing?
That will be the effect of it. Whether that was the intention to begin with or not, that will be the outcome, because governments all around the world are doing this. And rest assured, privacy commissioners, data protection authorities are very, very concerned. In Europe, they introduced a very strong new law just a few years ago in 2018, the General Data Protection Regulation. The intention of that was to strengthen privacy measures and increase personal control over the use of your information. That's going to be going by the wayside if this continues. There is enormous concern. We have to clamp down on this now.
But how? How does one clamp down on it if you can't, go to, I guess you just don't eat out anymore. You can't go to a restaurant. Your kids can't play in sports. You cannot visit an arena. Can you even go to a healthcare center? I don't know what's going to be on the line here. But how does one clamp down on it? How do you stand up and say no to a global surveillance?
I am the eternal optimist. I'm hoping there'll be enough opposition to this that people will say to the governments all around the world, enough. We are not going to give you our vaccine information. You cannot demand vaccine passports. That's personal health information. This has to stop. So, as I said, the eternal optimist, I am praying that will come about eventually.
Okay, so you brought up this example, Michelle. You went to a funeral home. You showed them a paper, right? You showed them something because you had to make a decision. I want to mourn. And again, my condolences to you for the person who passed away. But you wanted to access that place because you wanted to offer your condolences and respect. You made a decision and you shared something in order to access somewhere. How do people make that kind of assessment? How should be people approaching vaccine passports and risk management, if you will?
Well, frankly, I just think people should, it's like everything, supply and demand, right? At the end of the day, it's consumers who dominate what the supply and demand is. And at the end of the day, if we're all complacent and we accept it, then it's going to keep happening. But I think if there's a lot of pushback and people fighting it, again, some form of civil disobedience, I do believe that we can actually say is enough. So for instance, I remember reading about how Doug Ford said that come March, if everything still stays in a streamline as it is, that we won't have to wear our masks anymore in public, except for public transportation. And I would, at that point, would be like, well, that would be the indicator saying, well, if we don't have to wear masks, then I don't have to show a vaccine passport. And at the end of the day, it's just like, you can't have it both ways, right? If you're using one as a protective means and then the other one as a protective means, one, we weigh the risk. What is more risky to you? And I would argue showing my personal information and my health information is much more riskier to me. If you're letting me take my mask off, then I don't need to show you my personal health information.
Agree. And if I could add, there are protests all around the world, literally as we speak, every day, objecting to vaccine passports and all of these incursive measures. You're not seeing them on mainstream media, but they are everywhere. We see them. We're getting word on this. So rest assured, there is enormous opposition to all of this.
So you're an optimist, Dr. Ann. I think I'm more of a pessimist, or I don't know. I'm very cynical. I don't see enough people standing up. I know social media is suppressing things. Fine. Facebook won't share things, but people want those conveniences. People want their kids in sports. People want to go eat in a restaurant. They're not used to not doing those things. So what exactly has to happen for people to say, hey, that's my privacy that I just violated. I probably shouldn't have done that.
And Tanya, I know you're not seeing it because, as you said, Facebook isn't showing it. Mainstream media has cut out all of these massive oppositions, people protesting. I'm talking thousands of people all around the world are protesting this. And unfortunately, mainstream media is not showing it. So it is unfortunate. And yes, of course, people want all these conveniences, but they also want freedom. And I believe they want privacy long term. So here's hoping.
Okay, well, we'll end it there. Thank you both so very much. And I appreciate this discussion. And we'll see what happens.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what are you going to do? What kind of risk assessment will you take before you hand over your vaccine passport? For Counterpoint, I'm Tanya Granick-Allen.